The United States drops the death penalty against El Zambada.
Let's get to breaking news. A few moments ago, it was announced that the United States government withdrew the death penalty against Ismael Zambada.
Okay, why y'all? Why y'all think they did it? Why you think they took that off the table? Anybody got any good ideas? You think that they're as noble as y'all thought he was? Y'all thought he was mad noble and he wanted to see his children in his old age? So he turned himself in? We laughed at that. So you think the United States government is so loyal that they had him dead to rights and able to put the unaliving penalty on him and they didn't? Because they're noble? Or they don't want the stink of it? Or is he talking?
Well, it was indeed the United States Attorney's Office, which we expected to make a decision after its previous appearance, but today, through this letter, it decided to inform us that it will not seek the death penalty against Ismael Zambada Garcia. El Mayo, former founder and leader of the Sinaloa cartel. The letter was signed by Josep Nacella Jr., who is leading the prosecution in this case. And I quote, it says, "The government respectfully submits this letter to inform the court and the defense that the Attorney General has authorized and ordered this office not to seek the death penalty against the defendant Ismael Zambada Garcia." Let's remember that, Pamela, he faces 17 charges in total, related to organized crime, drug trafficking such as fentanyl, cocaine, methamphetamine, heroin, use of firearms, money laundering, all within the federal court of Brooks, New York. That court, where Joaquin El Chapo Guzman was also tried, in fact, is part of the same criminal prosecution as Chapo Guzman, and the letter was also sent to the judge who handled both cases. Judge Brian Hogan. We can also remember, for example, the case of Genaro Garcia Luna. As I was saying, the last appearance was on June 16th there in the federal court of Brooklyn. The prosecution had to inform whether it would seek the death penalty. It requested an extension of time. Now, his next appearance had been set for August 25th, but through this letter he confirms that he will not seek the death penalty. Since his appearance in Brooklyn federal court, the defense team in the Zambada case, led by Frank Perez, said they were seeking a deal to have the death penalty dropped in exchange for Zambada reaching a plea agreement.
Remember that?
That has yet to be confirmed. But
that has yet to be confirmed. Huh? How long before somebody looks up and says, "Hey man, for some reason we can't find him in the system"? Ain't that how it goes? And we start seeing families get pulled across the border to this side.
You'll have to watch to see if that was the motive. It's worth remembering, on July 25th of last year, Ismael Zambada Garcia arrived on U.S. soil. He was arrested as part of this controversial plot, in which Joaquin Guzman Lopez, the son of Chapo Guzman, according to the U.S. and Mexican governments, set up a trap to take Zambada Garcia to New Mexico, then transfer him to Texas, and finally to Brooklyn to be charged in exchange for Joaquin Guzman Lopez and his brother Ovidio, who had already been extradited to the United States, receiving...
Bro, that's kind of like the plot of the century, bro. Like, that's a huge plot right there, man. You're going to take your godfather, who's the untouchable boss, you're going to snatch him, you're going to throw him in an airplane, you're going to bring him over to U.S. custody. That's the plot of the century right there, man. They pulled that shit off.
Procedural benefits. So this is how this case involving the Sinaloa cartel and the big names of the Sinaloa cartel progresses, Pamela. Of course, we will be very attentive to how it develops.
Of course, it is important to make known the reason for this change in the sentence, or at least in what was sought, which was the death penalty, but also the reactions that this decision will generate on the part of the authorities. You already mentioned to us that it is presumably because El Mayo Zambada could plead guilty to some of these charges. Yes, well, that was the negotiation. Fran Perez, the lawyer, had confirmed it to us. In exchange for the death penalty being dropped, they were negotiating a plea agreement. We will see if that is the decision. It will eventually be confirmed, and of course we will be detailing it in the Milenio Pamela spaces. And let's also remember that a few weeks ago, Ovidio Guzman, also better known as El Raton, pleaded guilty in the United States, and that caused some of the charges to be dropped. Could it be that the U.S. authorities are trying to repeat this formula by mentioning it in some way?
Perhaps at least in the plea agreement. What we do know, for example, is that Ovidio Guzman was an active collaborator with the authorities, providing...
Come on, I thought the old man was noble. He bit the cheese. Because he's a good tax-paying citizen? Okay. The Chapitos made him snitch. He didn't really want to snitch. It's the Chapitos' fault. It seals all of them. They all did it. All the top guys, man. Mayo, Chapo, say, oh, Chapo never took the stand. Chapo turned around and told the United States government, I'm not the boss. Mayo is. Cooperated. I guess we'll see how this whole thing unfolds, because if someone has valuable info on Mexican politicians, it's Yoma. Papas, he could put everybody in jail, no? He's been, 40 years untouched? With all the connections? Think about it. It was realistic for him to be called by his godson and said, I need you to come with me and quell a political beef between El Rocha Moya and Melesio Quinn. That means that old man is used to being plugged in those conversations. No honor amongst thieves. No, not at all. He's been working. When you're on that level, you're definitely in tune with the three-letter boys. We've been heading. Every major cartel has major intel on every president, but we never see it. Yeah, I do believe there's intel, but there is a reason we never see the intel and don't think we ever will. All I know is this. They all made deals, top to bottom. Both sides. Doesn't matter. Rocha's going to get rolled up, mark my words. I mean, he's the only, other than the guys that are at war, he's the only guy walking the streets. is the governor.
Especially since this presidency, where one of Donald Trump's first actions was to give instructions to Pan Bondi to execute the death sentences that were frozen during Biden's 6-year term, Biden's last 4-year term.
So, Trumpito told Pan Bondi to unfreeze all the frozen executions that they had. I'm sure that put Mayo and his legal team on notice. Like, coño, man, we ain't got one yet, but we gonna get one, and we don't want that problem.
Yes. So, this is a genuine surprise for everyone. There are several possible explanations. Let's see, and you're pointing it out well.
She says, so since Trumpito unfroze all of those frozen executions, why would they take that off the table for Yoma?
In the case of Vicente Carrillo and Mayo Zambada, we know that they were already negotiating with the prosecutors. So, it was expected that at some point it would be announced that the death penalty was off the table, and that eventually it could be announced later that they had indeed provided some cooperation. Cooperation.
You hear that?
And that eventually it could be announced later that they had indeed provided some cooperation, as happened with Ovidio Guzman. And that would have been the end of the matter. There would have been no trial, etc., etc. But Caro Quintero's case is special. I mean, let's remember the tremendous, hard-hitting scene they created with these 100 DEA agents surrounding him, and, furthermore, we had no information whatsoever that Caro Quintero had been negotiating anything. Nothing had been offered to him, as was offered to all the other big capos who came to the United States in this batch of 29 people that the Mexican administration handed over.
They weren't extradited, remember? They were expelled. They were expatriated. They were exed out. Lo mandaron pa'l carajo. They were sent to the bathroom.
Put them in a fucking bed, you might.
They were sent to the upper room.
The United States in the case, it was not handed over. It was handed over by the Chapitos, but not by the Mexican government. But it was not covered by the extradition treaty, which would have indicated that it would not be handed over to them. That is, that it would be handed over, but removing the death penalty from the table. So it is very curious. There are several explanations. One of them is that they are being considered, right? That the Mexican government in this last round of calls that it had with Donald Trump for the tariffs, it could have been for other things, reached an agreement to, let's say, remove the death penalty from the table. Well, yes, but then, why only these 3?
Yeah. Let's see if tomorrow, in the coming weeks, the same pardon is offered to the other
20 or
26 prisoners who are missing and who could face the death penalty. We don't know. But it's interesting that if the Mexican government negotiated or made a pact or arranged, or it was done through some diplomatic trickery, that it was only these 3 people, and particularly Caro Quintero.
The other possibility, which we already know is the old saying that we all know, is that they negotiated something.
Caro Quintero, Carrillo Fuentes and Mayo have a lot to offer. Especially Mayo has a lot to offer.
Well, Carrillo Fuentes, Yoma, and Rafael Caro Quintero, those are the guys that they took it off the table?
Caro Quintero, not so much because he wasn't active. Because even from prison he was active running his cartel. But he was a capo whose past glories were long ago, not at that time. So he has little to offer. We don't.
No, Elisa, why he was really offered this favor. It is not unusual. Let's say, it is not characteristic of the Donald Trump administration to extend
these types of benefits to people who have every right to face the death penalty if they are found guilty. Does this mean, Roberta, that they would be reaching a plea agreement, or could they, with this pardon, face a trial if they do not plead guilty? Or are we rather heading towards these agreements where there will be no trial? Well, look, anything can happen, because it is one thing for the prosecution to decide not to seek the death penalty and quite another for there to be no trial.
Right, they could still have a trial and just take that shit off the table and that'd be it.
Well, the death penalty may no longer be on the table, but they could face trial, and what happens is if they are found guilty, they will be sentenced to 300 years in prison, or I don't know how long. Or if they are found guilty for the crimes.
Caro Quintero don't got 10 years. Mayo don't got 10 years. Carillo Fuentes don't look like he got 10 years.
Those are separate things, right? But the fact that they have, let's say, removed the death penalty from the table is not normally done unless there is a tomadka, right? I mean, well, I'll take the death penalty off the table. But what are you giving me in exchange? What are we negotiating in exchange? Normally, it's not just done like that. Yes. So, obviously there's a lot of this. There's a lot that we don't know, and that, well, knowing the secrecy that is characteristic of American prosecutors' offices, we may never see it. The point is that something happened. Something happened, and we'll see how much information they're going to offer. Because one says, well, the boss of bosses for so many decades.
Yeah, something happened. Let's make a deal. Let's make a deal.
Mayo Zambada. Well, what can he offer beyond himself? Well,
what can Yoma offer besides himself? All right, we've often spoken this with Jay Flores about how, what does he have to give? Does he have this big giant client or this giant association list with these government names on it that he can damn? I don't know. What does he got?
Yes, we're going to see a lot of people that we're going to finish off. Don't close the door. Thank you very much, dear Roberta, and let's keep reporting and informing.
Roberta basically said, any of this shit can go down, girl. That's what she said. Any of this shit can happen. Right? They're making up the rules as they go along. Any of this shit is down. Yeah, who does Mayo have to give up? Who knows, man? A president, a governor, but it seems to me like that's what the people believe. The people believe, oh, he got this book of receipts. He's had to have had a lot of relationships over the years. And I'm sure there's information there, but is it information that is going to do anything for him is the question. He's not talking, plus he don't have that much time left to live. They're just better off taking the penalty off. That way, other people think he's cooperating and they can bring other people down. He knows way too much, kind of like Epstein, but with rugs, in my humble opinion. I believe he's likely talking, but the blowback is not something we deal with, aka black ops, plausible deniability. If Mexico send the 29 Mexican nationals and they're unalived in the United States, the families could sue the Mexican government for the unaliving of their relatives in another country. And that would be a pretty big problem for the Mexican government at a time when it surely doesn't want it. I want to imagine that it was part of the agreement that they were told, as soon as you sign, promise that you won't go against them. Because there are at least, 3 others who were being sought for the unaliving penalty, and it hasn't been announced that the capital punishment will not be in their cases. I'm talking about Z40, Z42, and the Beltran Leyva hitman, Jose Rodolfo. So for those guys, it hasn't been taken off the table. But for Yoma, Carillo, and Rafael Caro Quintero, it was taken off? Is that what we're saying? Bro, you saying they care? I'm not saying shit. They saying it. Bro, you saying they care about the 29 U.S. unalived? What about the thousands the Bartel did over the years? It's a joke. That's definitely a joke. Absolutely. But, a legal loop-de-loo is a legal loop-de-loo. And when a motherfucker get it, they gonna use it. Did they do it because he's cooperating, or did they do it because of this legal pressure that he's talking about? And guess what? I don't see legalities being a big deal to the U.S. government in that sense. And Mexico government don't give a shit. Well, that's for the Mexican government, but why would the U.S. care? Just my point of view. If they don't deserve that penalty, who the fuck? If they don't deserve that penalty, who the fuck does? But why'd they take it off? I believe he's too damn old to go through the process. He ain't gonna live long. Process of what? His process is he could be in jail and just be in jail. He could be in jail doing whatever talking he's gonna do. But yeah, I don't see him lasting. I don't see too many of them lasting too long. I mean, in my opinion, it's because they're cooperating straight up, and the current Mexican government doesn't care if they cooperate, because all these are old cartel members that colluded with past administrations, right? They're not gonna have him with a receipt talking about I talked to cider bombs. They won't go after them. They pretend, but it can create too many issues. Remember, they let go of the general. Imagine an ex-president. Oh my goodness, they don't want no problems.